Dobro večer, dragi gledatelji. Dobrodošli još jedan na jedan. Gospodin Mojmir Kallus, moj večerašnji gost. Dobro večer, dobrodošli.
Dobri večer.
Gospodin Mojmir Kallus će imati u Hrvatskoj vrlo intenzivan program. Ja ću i pokazati. On nam dolazi iz Međunarodnog kršćanskog veleposlanstva u Jeruzalemu. Evo, možete napraviti i malo veću sliku, tako da svi oni koji su zainteresirani za ove teme mogu poslije emisije u srijedu također prisustvovati jednom predavanju. Biće i naš Boris Havel, jedan pametan čovjek. I idemo odmah raditi, idemo na pitanja. Prvo da vas predstavim. Recite nam nešto o samom tom povjerenstvu za međunarodne poslove u Jeruzalemu. Pa ćemo onda i vas predstaviti. Kažite nam odakle dolazite.
Well, I'm originally coming from the Czech Republic, from Prague. This is why I kind of understand a little bit. And I have been working for the International Christian Embassy first in the Czech Republic for almost 30 years. Then I moved to Jerusalem, where I live with my family for the last 7 years. And I serve at the head office of our organization in the position which is called Vice President for International Affairs.
Što je točno ta Međunarodna kršćanska ambasada u Jeruzalemu? Čime se ona bavi, koja je svrha, koji je cilj?
It is an international Christian organization, a non-government organization, which was founded in 1980 in Jerusalem. And the main goal is to provide humanitarian assistance and, as we say, comfort to the Jewish people. Now, the motto is taken from the Bible. We as Christians do read the Bible, and the prophet Isaiah says in chapter 40, "Comfort ye my people, says your God." And we understand that to mean that God is speaking to us, believers from non-Jewish nations, that the time has come to show comfort and assistance to the Jewish people.
Naravno da je fair predstaviti i vas. Naši gledatelji vas možda manje poznaju, pa recite par riječi o sebi, budući da taj vaš životni put je svakako interesantan.
Well, I was born in then Czechoslovakia, in a nominal Christian family, and I studied mathematics at the University of Prague. And in the midst of my studies, I decided to put my trust in God. So I became an active Christian, and that slowly changed my life. I became a lay leader, a lay preacher in Protestant church in Prague. Then I went on to become an assistant pastor, and so I served in the church for the last almost 40 years. And also I founded this office, this branch of the International Christian Embassy after the fall of Iron Curtain in the early 90s. And since then I've been serving the Lord as best as I can. I also worked as a translator and interpreter, both in the Christian circles. I was privileged to translate for people like Billy Graham. And also I was working for the Czech governments and many businesses, so that was part of my profession. And as I say now, in the last 7 years, I am full-time with my organization in Israel.
Meni je ekscelencija Ilan Mor, bivši veleposlanik Izraela, države Izrael u Republici Hrvatskoj, govorio o vama. I nije puno vas predstavlja, jer vas i ne mora predstavljati, budući da na internetu postoji sve, a i vaš rad je meni djelomično poznat. Pa mi je kazao da obratim pažnju naprosto na vaše poimanje Izraela. Vi Izrael ne doživljavate samo kao jednu od država Bliskog istoka. Dapače, rekao bih da je doživljavate na neki način naprosto iz biblijskog teksta, iz biblijske tradicije i nasljeđa. Dva pojma su za vas tu bitna kad govorite o Izraelu. Govorite o zemlji i sjemenu koji je Bog dao Abrahamu. Mislim da cijeli taj sklop će biti vrlo zanimljiv našim gledateljima. Na koji način vi dakle pristupate Izraelu?
First of all, I have to say that when I first visited Israel, I immediately felt at home. And I know that this feeling is shared by many other Christians. So there must be something in the land that makes it somehow strangely familiar, even though it is a foreign country. And you are right, in the Bible, God said to Abraham, to this seed of yours, I will give this land. So the seed, or the people, and the land are meant to be together. And it's a paradox that twice in the history of the Jewish people, they were exiled from their own land, and every time they were divorced, neither the people nor the land prospered. And now we are witnessing for the last century almost that they are coming back to the land, and the land is flourishing again. The desert blooms. So that indeed is something that we need to have in mind. When we speak about Israel, we mean both the people and the land.
Sad govorite tako da se na neki način uživljavate u poziciju Židova. Moram kazati da pri posjeti Izraelu sam ja sretao ljude na svakom koraku koji cijelo vrijeme govore o svetoj zemlji. Taj doživljaj jednog posebnog odnosa prema Izraelu nije prisutan samo kod židovske populacije. Kako vi kao kršćanin osjećate naprosto i taj prostor, ambijent i sam Izrael?
Well, of course, it is the Holy Land where our Lord was born and lived, and died and was resurrected and escaped from this earth. And as we believe, he will also come back to this earth, to the same place. So it obviously has a lot of meaning for Christians. And it is very meaningful if you just walk through the land. The Bible is opening to you in a new way, because you not only read the text, but you can imagine how it looked like when Jesus was walking in the Galilee or walking to Jerusalem. So it actually helps you better understand the text of the Bible.
Vi danas doživljavate Izrael kao naprosto drugačiji no što su to ine države. Mislite da ima stanovit ekscepcionalan položaj u svijetu. Kakav to poseban položaj, ne mislim sada više na tradiciju, nego na sadašnju situaciju za vas ima Izrael?
I think Israel is unique in many ways. First of all, it is unique that after 2,000 years of being dispersed around the world, they did not disappear as a nation. They came back, they kept their religion, they revived their language. And so we can say that Israel today is a nation which lives in a land, speaks the language, and worships the same God as 2,000 years ago. So that is already unique. And to me, it speaks something about the resilience of the Jewish people. Even though they suffered many pogroms and persecution, they are still here. So that is already unique. And also the fact that they survived and they are actually thriving in the land, even though the land is very small. Just look at the map. It's just a tiny dot in the sea of the Arab and Muslim world. Israel still has survived, and it has given the world many great inventions. It is a modern, prosperous country. It is unique in terms of their water management, for instance, because when the British were taking care of the land during the British Mandate, they reportedly said that only about 2 million people can live in the land between the River Jordan and the sea, because otherwise they would not have enough water. Now there are more than 10 million, and they have enough water so they can even export. And that is because of some of the inventions, desalinization, and also they are making the desert bloom. So these are some of the unique achievements which are actually not only good for Israel, but they are bringing health and progress and prosperity to many other nations.
Postoji jedno potpitanje koje će biti vrlo zapravo disperzno jer nikad ga ni sam sebi nisam formulirao, iako se ja zbog svoje pozicije kao katolik koji radi za European Jewish Association dosta često srećem sa njime. Pitaju me razni ljudi kako je to, kako je moguće obzirom na pogotovo ortodoksne, dakle, Židove koji su me angažirali tu, naprosto zbog, eto tako, moga posla i nekih relacija. I vjerujem da ste vi u sličnoj situaciji. Je li to neka osobna fascinacija Izraelom? Je li to osobna fascinacija židovskom tradicijom? Je li tu možda čak i dio osjećanja da mi kao Evropljani imamo stanovit dug naprosto zbog 40. godina spram Židova? Uslijed čega i kako je to počelo sa tim vašim odlasima i sada boravkom u Izraelu?
Well, I believe everyone has their own story. As I said, when I first visited Israel, I just felt the connection. I felt that something is really familiar, something feels like home. And on the other hand, I had been already studying the Bible, and I understood that in the Bible there is a lot about Israel as the nation, and I understood that they are still God's nation, God's people, that God gave a promise to Abraham, and that we can see that these promises are being fulfilled. That is reason enough for fascination. But I would also say that sometimes Christians, they have either prejudice, and there is a long history to that, or they have this fascination which comes to being like they had rose-colored glasses, and they see everything, you know, in the best colors. And this is not true. Israel is not a heaven on earth. It is not a perfect nation. It is, in many respects, just like everybody else. And they have their problems. And so I think living in Israel, as I do temporarily, helps one get I would say a more balanced approach. Sometimes it's really not easy to live there because of all the pressures, and still you are aware of something unique in the land. So I'm trying to balance it out.
Kako biste iz cipela stranca koji povremeno živi u Izraelu opisali današnju situaciju? Mislim upravo na ovaj rat, njegov početak, na njegovo trajanje i perspektive.
Without any doubt, the massacre of the 7th of October completely changed the whole nation. Israel has been shaken to the core. They didn't expect it. They didn't expect it in such size and in such cruelty. Everybody in Israel knows someone who either was killed or kidnapped or fell in the war. And even more importantly, Israelis lost trust in their army, in their secret service, in the government, in all the institutions. And that means that the country has been profoundly shaken. I don't think that they have yet found an answer. They feel like they are fighting for survival. Some people say it's the second war of independence. It's the real existence of the Jewish state is at stake. Recently, there have been some military successes which are helping to turn around the mood in Israel. There is, I would say today, some light at the end of the tunnel. There is some hope. But the atmosphere is really heavy. And there are even, you know, protests and disagreements. The nation is divided. On the other hand, I have lived in Jerusalem for most of the time since the war started. And at the first glance, you wouldn't recognize that we are at war. I hardly heard the sirens in the city of Jerusalem because it's far away from both fronts. The stores are full, restaurants are full, people go about their own business. In the summer, beaches are full. So there is a tendency to have some normalcy. And I think that is true for Israel generally, not even during the war, even before. It has always lived in danger. And so people are trying to live normal life as much as they can. But at the same time, at the back of their minds, there is always this awareness. Something can happen at any minute.
Osnovna i temeljna tema, i zato sam i pokazao ovaj flyer, i ove emisije, ali zapravo vašeg angažmana su odnosi kršćana prema židovima i Izraelu. Krenimo u minucioznije i detaljnije tumačenje tih odnosa. Krenimo od biblijskog sloja. Kako vi vidite sam fundament na kojem su se gradili ti odnosi? Poslije ćemo doći do ovih 2000 godina vrlo teških i kompliciranih odnosa, vrlo često.
Well, if we talk about the relations between Jews and Christians, and we want to start at the beginning, we have to say that what is now called Christianity started as a Jewish sect, as a Jewish group within Jewish society. Jesus was Jewish, his first disciples were Jewish, they were worshipping at the temple, they observed all the Jewish rituals, they read the Jewish Bible, so that was just one of the expressions of Jewish life at the time. And when they believed that Jesus is the Messiah, they began to share the message, and many other Jews shared that and joined them. But very quickly it also penetrated this Jewish society, let's say, and first non-Jewish believers came in. And then soon the split started. So already by the 2nd century we see that there was a very clear split between the Jewish establishment and the Christian groups. And that got more and more severe for many reasons, which I don't think we have the time to go into, but it has to do with the Roman Empire, and then first the Jewish religion was religio licita and the Christians not. Then Jerusalem was destroyed, but the Christians fled, so they felt like they were betraying their own people. And then it turned around when Constantine received Christianity. That became the official religion, and the persecution of the Jewish people started. And there was always this attempt to distinguish between the Jews and the Christians. You know, the Jews were the bad ones, and that started the whole unfortunate history of Christian persecution of Jews.
Kad gledate, rekao sam da ćemo u nastavku probati na neki način, ne apsolvirati, ali proći tu kronologiju tih teških odnosa. Kako vi vidite zapravo te složene odnose i na kojoj, nemoguće kazati naravno da je masivan krivac ova ili ona strana, ali kako vi vidite zapravo tu krivicu? Ponajprije na razumijevanju, a onda u svim njegovim formama tog nerazumijevanja, te dvije strane koje su eskalirali, mislim, do pogroma, holokausta i svega ostalog.
I think that at the beginning, the Jews were persecuting Christians. We can read it in the New Testament. But when the Christian church gained more power, it started to persecute the Jews. But it did take a few centuries, and it did involve what I would call indoctrination, because Christians were taught that everything Jewish is bad and they have to completely separate from the Jewish tradition, from the Jewish calendar, from the Jewish feast, and so forth. And then later on, more and more layers were added, including real like the blood libel and stories which were completely fabricated, accusing the Jews of using the blood of Christians to bake matzah, and things that are completely false. And unfortunately, this official theology influenced the masses, and the masses were happy to persecute the Jews and to participate in pogroms. And so we can say that throughout the Middle Ages, Jews in Europe were treated really badly, with some exceptions. And I should also add that when the Protestant Reformation came, it didn't improve at all, because Luther was first hoping that he would win the Jews for his theology. And when it didn't happen, then he wrote some very negative books or booklets about Jews, and to such a degree that Hitler was happy to quote Luther in explaining what he is doing. So there's a long tradition, and I think it influenced the European nations for such a long time. So while we end at the Holocaust, of course, Hitler was not a Christian, and he persecuted Christians as well, but he did take from this a long and unfortunately rich tradition.
To je sve skupa naprosto nevjerovatno kad se uzme u obzir da, recimo, sjetit ću se pape Benedikta, se izražavamo o Židovima kao starijoj braći, i to u ovom našem kršćanskom krugu, da govorimo, kad govorimo znanstveno, o judeo-kršćanskoj civilizaciji, tradiciji i tako dalje. Činilo bi se, i rekao bi čovjek, da smo mi jedni na druge ponosni, zapravo da to vidimo kao preplet zapravo odnose jedne dvije tradicije koje imaju isti korijen. Jednako je tako često puta i sa, dakle, islamom. Zaboravljamo sve Averroesa, Avicene, ina dostignuća, dakle, od medicine do filozofije, i jednostavno se realiziramo samo sprem onog lošeg. Mi kršćani govorimo o tome, kad govorimo tako imbecilno, kako kažete, na osnovu jedne falš teologije, histerija mase počinje govoriti, Židovi su razapeli Krista. Židovi pak znaju govoriti o lošem proroku za zla vremena. Vi ste teolog, vi dakle, ste čovjek, dakle, i znanosti i dakle, hermeneutiča Svetog pisma i sada ne nabraja. Kako biste vi zapravo procijenili tu nesretnu povijest ove 2000 godina, sad smo samo kratko dotaknuli, upravo u tom aspektu istovremeno i razumijevanja i nerazumijevanja. Jednog ponosa na tu tradiciju kad se mi Evropljani eto tako deklariramo, a sa druge strane jedno stravično nerazumijevanje i intencionalno nerazumijevanje. Mi vrlo dobro znamo što činimo. Jedni i drugi.
Yeah. That's a difficult question. But I would say that in Christian relation towards the Jews, you mentioned Pope Benedict and even John Paul II and even the Second Vatican Council, but we have to understand that was a complete revolution in Christian thinking which came after the Holocaust. So I would say that there are two trends. One of them is the tradition of Christian-Jewish relations, which is problematic, and every Jew knows more about it than Christians, so they would always tell you. They always remember what we did to them. But on the other hand, after the Holocaust, there seems to be quite a growing trend of rethinking the Christian theology, and the Second Vatican is a great example, completely turning around in terms of relations to Jews and also to Muslims, by the way. And so we see that there is a growing movement which speaks about Jewish Christian culture that has been invented after the war. We didn't hear about it before. And by the way, our organization is also one of the outgrowths of this same movement, because we seek to redress some of the wrong that has been done by Christians over the centuries. And sometimes we say that our goal is to show a different face of Jesus to the Jewish people, one that is friendly.
Kako je vaša procjena? Koliko uspijamo u tom međusobnom razumijevanju? Recimo, vi kad se krećete u raznim krugovima Jeruzalema, recimo u doticaju sa ortodoksijom, mislim na same Židove. Ja sam primjerice ovdje blizak sa rabi Pini Zaklasom, radim za organizaciju na čelu koje je rabi Margolin, i evo, ja sam dakle u stalnom kontaktu svakodnevno sa Hasidima, Habadom i tako dalje. I moram kazati da nigdje ne osjećam nikakvo nerazumijevanje, dapače osjećam veliku prihvaćenost. Kako vi osjećate te razlike i bliskosti?
it's a process, and it really depends on who you speak to. And I think it's a good question to ask about Israel, because in Israel, the Jews are at home. They are not afraid to be in a minority like they do in the diaspora, so they are probably freer to express themselves. And I would say the first reaction is distance. We are happy that a Jew would say to a Christian, we're happy that you are not going to kill us anymore, so just leave us alone. That's the starting point. And then when they see, and then it's individual, when they have experience with Christians who really help, who do something practical. We are engaged in humanitarian aid for more than 40 years, and it takes years to win the trust. And that happens. So we even have rabbis, Orthodox rabbis, that work together, that attend our meeting, that are able to be there among us. On the other hand, there are Orthodox groups which are very virulently anti-missionary, because they consider every Christian to be a missionary for a good reason. And they are trying to fight us, and they don't want us to be there. And there is everything in between. And also, not everybody in Israel is Orthodox. So many secular Jews...
Ne, ja sam namjerno sam to postavio iz pozicije ortodoksije, jer tu dođe najčešće jasno do nesporazuma. Sa liberalnim ljudima svugdje na svijetu drugačije.
I think there are some good attempts on both sides. I know that there were some texts towards the Jews by late John Paul II and by Pope Benedict, and there was a response by rabbis, by several important rabbis in Israel called Dabru Emet, let us speak the truth. And they were very friendly. They mentioned the differences that prevail between Christians and Jews, but they also mentioned and recognized the positive that the Christian world has brought. Mainly in their eyes, we can be credited as Christians to bring the knowledge of the only God to the whole world.
Probajmo sad iz perspektive kršćanina vidjeti odnose Židova i Islama. Jer naravno da je ovaj rat nešto što ima novu spiralu, teško uopće zamisliti mir, o tome možemo kazati također riječ dvije, ali kako vi vidite te relacije Islama i Židova? Naravno, u politici se to vidi drugačije. Postoje Abrahamski ugovori, računa se na mogućnost odnosa Izraela-Saudijske Arabije, tako dalje, ali ispod svega toga postoji taj temelj, odnos Židova i Islama, koji ne sluti na dobro. Iran vidi, recimo, Izrael kao nešto što, budimo otvoreni, treba zbrisati sa lica zemlje.
Well, Iran and the Muslim Brotherhood, the Hamas, they are not the only representatives of Islam. And the Abraham Accords tell us that they can also draw from the same sources and come to completely different solutions. In fact, this modern Islamism is a relatively recent phenomenon. Maybe for the last 100 years, some people say that it was the reaction to the modernization in the Arab world and an attempt to stand against the West and go back to the 7th century style of Islam. And unfortunately, there is evidence that there is a lot of connection between the ideology of the Muslim Brotherhoods and of Iran and the Nazi ideology, because Hitler already in the 20s has established connections with the Arabs, and they created a special brand of anti-Semitism which mixed it with selected sources from the Quran and created this ideology of hatred which prevails until today. But this is not the only face of Islam, and I think it's fair to say that the Quran is not very clear. There are different passages that you can use to either sow hatred or to speak about peace. And I think what the Abraham Accords did is significant because they, in fact, confirmed that Israel, the Jewish people, are part of the Middle East. They are part of the history. They belong there. They are not a Western colonialist enterprise, but they are one of them. And I think that is a good possibility, good foundation and potential for understanding.
Mislite li, ono što sam malo prije rekao, da postoji ikakva šansa za mir? Ne mislim za primirje, mislim za mir.
Well, that's a very difficult question. I think the most we can hope for would be a long-term ceasefire, and especially when it comes to Gaza, because as we know, most of the people in Gaza share the hatred that Hamas showed very clearly. And those who don't, they are afraid because this is not a free society. And those who can be sympathetic to Israel, those who are for living together, for coexistence, they are branded as collaborators and they are killed by their own people. So unless there is a complete change of government in Gaza, I don't think we can even start to speak about some kind of a peaceful solution. And that is the big problem, because no one wants to govern Gaza, you know, not even any Arab nation. And I'm slightly more optimistic about Lebanon when we already speak about the war, because Lebanon is more diverse. There are many different groups, and not everybody likes Hezbollah. So then it's all mainly about making Lebanon free from Hezbollah again, and then Lebanon has no dispute with Israel. They could easily sign a peace treaty, and I believe there could be a real peace between the two nations.
Evo, imamo ovdje, dakle, prizore Gaze. To je ono što naravno opterećuje cijelu stvar. Jer ako sada preskočimo pitanje koje se ne smije preskočiti, evo recimo najjednostavnije, kakav je vaš odnos kao kršćan spram Gaze, ostaje ipak nešto što transcendira sve te naše posebne, partikularne poglede kao stav. Čujte, kako nakon ovakvog svijeta jednostavno izgraditi svijet normalnih odnosa? Gotovo je nemoguće zamisliti da će generacija koja će ipak dakle, preživjeti i stasati u ovakvom svijetu imati normalne odnose.
It's very, very difficult. It's true. But again, to me, the most important thing is who will govern Gaza, because Gaza needs to be freed from Hamas in the first place, and Hamas is still governing there. They are still stealing all the humanitarian aid. They are still oppressing their own people. So once they are free, then they could start thinking, and then they could be helped. Again, this is the question of who will set law and order in Gaza now. Israel cannot do it. Israel doesn't want to do it. No one else wants to do it. Perhaps some of the local clans could start doing it. And I really wish that the people of Gaza, they don't deserve to live under such conditions, that they could start rebuilding their country. But again, it's, I would even say that what we need in Gaza first is something similar to denazification, because that kind of hatred is killing them. And even if there is no Jew around, they would still kill each other. So that is the fundamental problem, and unfortunately I do not really see much solution. So personally, emotionally, I really feel for them, but I find it very hard even to help them. There is currently no way we can actively help the people who are there.
O tome sam htio pitati, kad ste spomenuli karitativan rad, na što ste točno mislili? Dakle, na karitativan rad u Izraelu samo ili trenutnu pomoć i Gazi?
Well, we are engaged in humanitarian work within Israel. We provide assistance to all who are in need, Jews, Arabs, Bedouins, Druze, Christians, Muslims, all who live there. But this is within a society where law and order reigns, so where you are not kidnapped or your help is not stolen and so forth. And currently no one can really go into Gaza because of the situation.
Recite nešto onda o toj 40-godišnjoj karitativnoj djelatnosti. U čemu se ona sve sastoji?
Well, let's start with one of the biggest projects. There is a home for elderly people in Haifa. All of them are Holocaust survivors. They all came to Israel after having survived. They are obviously in the very late age, 90s and 100 years old. There are currently about 70 of them, and we finance that building, mostly through generous contributions from German Christians. That's one thing. Then we help those who are in need, distributing food baskets and so forth. Usually we always work with local organizations which have their methods, they have the selection process, and we help finance. We also provide stipends for people who need it, like Arabs who find it harder to study university and to be integrated in the life of Israel, the Jewish people, new immigrants. We also provide help in an unfortunate way, but that is needed by providing bomb shelters and shelters for people that when there's a rocket and near Gaza, they had 13 seconds to find shelter, so they had to be everywhere, near bus stops, near playgrounds, near schools, and we provided, I think, almost 180 of them throughout the years. And so the need is changing, and the way we operate, we have long-term relationships with the different organizations that take care of the different needs in Israel, locals, which are proven, and then we constantly hear from them what is needed, and then we fundraise around the world and provide what is necessary.
Karl Kraus je jednom njemu svojstvom duhovitošću rekao da čovječanstvo nakon velikog rata, Prvog svjetskog rata, nije ništa naučilo. Da mu je kugla prošla kroz jedno uho, a na drugo izašla van. Ja bih to rekao, iako smo kazali da o ovom judeo-kršćanskom svijetu se počelo govoriti tek nakon iskustva holokausta, da ni mi nismo puno naučili. Evo sada to imamo prilike gledati u Europi. Recentan primjer su događaji u Amsterdamu. To nisu bili incidenti navijača, to je zaista bio prizor pogroma. Ja sam gledao desetine tih klipova i to je naprosto bio lov na Židove. Iz Francuske se Židovi iseljavaju. Rabi Barcelone kaže ovaj grad je izgubljen za nas. Neko to može doživljavati. Ovdje je malo inače zanimljivo u istočnom dijelu Europe vijesti o tome. No, kad surađujem sa svojim kolegama, dakle, kroz Brisel, ne iz Njemačke, Francuske, Španjolske, tako dalje, naprosto ostanem zabezeknut što se događa u Europi sa židovskom populacijom. Mogu napraviti samo jednu digresiju i ilustrirati. Kada je bio rabi Jakobs, koji je iz rabinske obitelji stare 8. stoljeća, kazao mi je da se silno ugodno osjećao na Esplanadi hotelu u Zagrebu, jer sa mnom priča najnormalnije nasred hotela. Ja kažem, dobro, što to znači nasred? Gdje sjedite kad ste u Nizozemskoj, Belgiji i tako dalje? A kaže, obično se povučem malo, znate, u dubinu hotela negdje, da baš nisam izložen u svojoj odjeći i tako dalje, što je stravično. Kad uzmemo ICEJ definition i kad razgovaramo na osnovu ovih novih definicija antisemitizma, koje sve oblike prepoznajemo i što mi to Evropljani i opet ne razumijemo kad cijela Europa gori i plamti ponovo, ja ne pretjerujem kad to govorim, nekim novim formama antisemitizma.
Yeah, that's true. You know, anti-Semitism is like a virus that tends to mutate. It takes on different forms, but the essence is the same. The essence says that Jews are the bad guys. They are the worst, and anti-Semitism attributes momentarily the worst crime to the Jewish people. And today, it is words like colonialism, genocide, apartheid, and these are all very false narratives which spread, unfortunately. And the IRA definition has captured that. And it says that some forms of anti-Semitism are the new form, the new anti-Semitism, which is expressed as hatred against Israel, against the Jewish state. We can say that Israel has become the Jew among the nation, and again, he is the target of hatred. For instance, such expressions of anti-Semitism could be denying the Jews the right to their self-determination, denying the very right to exist as a state, or applying double standards. It is from the state of Israel, things are required that are not required of any other nation. And then you have demonization, really using especially the cartoons and pictures, equating Jews with Nazis or with vermin, with apes and pigs and so forth. So these are some of them old expressions, but some of them are new, and basically they are moved to target Israel. So I'm not saying that every criticism of Israel is anti-Semitism, by far not.
Dobro, mislim, kritike Izraela postoje samom Izraelu, to jest njegovih raznih formi politike. To je dinamika demokratskog života, što sad mislim. Svako ko posjeti Izrael, Tel Aviv, recimo Jeruzalem, vidjet će na balkonima mnoštvo protestnih, ne znam, slogana i tako dalje. To je život, mislim, jedne demokratske zemlje.
Right. But they are all united in one thing. We don't want to commit collective suicide. We want to live. And that's the difference to the anti-Semites of Amsterdam and others.
Ajmo se još malo zadržati na tom antisemitizmu, jer je silno zanimljiva sad struktura. Što biste vi rekli? Vi dolazite, dakle, vi ste Čeh. Evo, Hrvatska, ne mogu reći da nije zemlja u kojoj nema tih proplamsaja, iako su vrlo čudne te situacije, slikanje, crtanje svastike na Poljudskom stadionu, pa se onda nikad kao ne dozna ko je to napravio. Naravno da toga ima, ali u komparaciji, u juxtapoziciji sprem onog što se zbiva na zapadu, mogao bih kazati da ovdje, mislim, antisemitizma u tolikoj mjeri, ne želim kazati u formi, nema. Kako vi vidite sad tu nevjerovatnu razliku? Mi imamo tu reč pogrom. To je slavenska, istočnoevropska riječ. Kako vidite sad tu situaciju u kojoj izgleda da na istoku Europe tog antisemitizma ima manje nego što ga ima na zapadu? Je li to samo posljedica doseljavanja većeg broja muslimanskog stanovništva u zapadne zemlje? I je li to posljedica toga što je možda taj stari antisemitizam, on perenira kao neka ponornica pa je prisutan, ali ga manje vidimo? U čemu je stvar?
Yeah, well, I agree that in the East the situation is different. In Czech Republic it's similar to Croatia. There are some incidents, but nothing comparable to Western Europe. And I would say there are several reasons. One of them is the presence of large Muslim populations, which are very active and they can be very violent. We don't have them. And the other thing is maybe the different political history, because we were under the Iron Curtain. We had our own, ideology. So I would say in my country, when we were told by the communists that Israel is the bad guy, we instinctively turned it around because we knew that the communists always lie. So we thought that probably Israel is right. And I think that still remains as a general feeling. But also, one of the new protagonists of the anti-Semitism in Western Europe is the political left and the radical left, the Greens and the Reds. And they have this narrative of colonialism, but we have never colonized anyone. We were colonized, so that doesn't really fly in our country. And so I think that there is this very strange as the English say, they are the Muslims and the leftists. They make very strange bedfellows. They are really very different in many ways, but they unite in the hatred of the Jews. And so there are some ideological components which are present in the West, but which we simply do not have this historical experience. I think that also can...
Ja se ne bih složio. Znate zašto? Kad pogledate, ili možda je to presnažno da se ne bih složio, nego bih samo upozorio, rekao sam pogrom, komunizam, ne samo istok, ima dugu tradiciju, ta se pod tepih gura, zapravo antisemitizma. I mi kad danas govorimo o tom lijevom, dakle, o lijevoj komponenti, dakle, zaboravljamo da ljevica, mislim, ima nevjerojatno dugu tradiciju antisemitizma.
Oh yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah,
da, mislim,
that's true. From you know, in Czechoslovakia, the biggest what you say, the biggest court case, fabricated court case in the early 50s was against the top members of the Communist Party, which were almost all Jewish. There was a Jewish court case which shows what you say, that there was anti-Semitism already at the time in the Communist Party.
Znate, ja kad sam ovdje razgovarao sa starijim ljudima čije su obitelji stradale, mislim, na židovske familije u Drugom svjetskom ratu, upozorio sam, Romano, da li znaš, nisu isti oni koji su koncentracijske logore gradili i oni koji su ih rušili. Da, ali oni koji su rušili 45. recimo u bivšoj Jugoslaviji, postoji stvari ovako. Da, vi možete biti slobodni i uzeti izraelsko državljanstvo, ali morate se tada lišiti imovine u Jugoslaviji. Na taj način se nastavi jedan vrlo specifičan odnos prema židovima. Tako da ti oblici zapravo diskriminacije židova traju u najperfidnijim formama stalno. Kako je to bilo recimo u Čehoslovačkoj?
I think Czechoslovakia had a tradition of being friendly to Jews already starting from Masaryk before the war, and but most of the Jews were killed by the Nazis. Those who remained, many of them chose to emigrate to Israel, and I think we even helped Jews from other nations pass through Czechoslovakia to get to Israel, and the relationship were positive at the beginning, and then communists just took over, and this period of very hostile relations started. After the Six-Day War in 1967, we even severed all diplomatic relations. So the Jews who remained, there were very few of them. They were really kept hiding in secret. They didn't want to expose their Jewish identity, and that was until the revolution of 1989.
To je situacija i dan danas, čak i u Hrvatskoj, dakle, u ovom prostoru, kad se govori o broju Židova, onda je ono uvijek mali, ali to je zato ujedno, jer se ljudi jednostavno, poučeni povijesnim iskustvom, u tom svom identitetu jednostavno ne izražavaju kao Židovi u mjeri u kojoj bi to mogli. Tu smo na kraju emisije i za završno pitanje bih vas volio zapravo čuti vaš stav. Što mislite o stavu pape Franje, da bi trebalo napraviti naprosto dvije države i da je to moguće jedino rješenje? Izrael, Palestinu,
we hear it not only from the Pope, we hear it from many. And
za kraj uzimam njega kao figuru koja ipak je... Da.
Yes, of course. In my humble opinion, I don't think this is realistic, because we have had a very clear example of what happens when the Arabs are given a place to govern, and that is Gaza. Gaza, all Israeli soldiers left Gaza in 2006, And that was a country which could govern itself without any hindrance. And we see what happened. So if a Palestinian state was to be created alongside a Jewish state, it would be like Hamas in Gaza, but much worse, because they are much closer to the population centers in Israel, and Hamas is the most popular party in the West Bank, so they would win elections. And again, Israel is not about to commit suicide, so even though many well-meaning people think that this is a solution, I don't think it is. And I tell you why. Because the conflict, as it is played out now, is not about territory. This is not a territorial conflict, it is a religious conflict. And Islam in this form knows no compromise. So they will fight until they fight the Jews completely. And that's why some other solution should be found.
Hvala vam lijepo na vašem vremenu, hvala lijepo na vašem gostovanju. Svi vi, dakle, gledatelji koji imate interesa, a u Zagrebu ste ili okolici za ovu temu, još jednom odnos kršćana prema Židom Izraelu. Sutra u 4 sata u knjižnici čitaonici Bogdana Ogrizevića bit će, dakle, moj gost tamo, kao i gospodin Havel. Hvala vam lijepo još jednom i do nekog drugog susreta. Doviđenja.
Thank you for the invitation.
Hvala lijepo na vašem gledanju i praćenju ove emisije i gledajte nas i sljedeći utorak.